Okay.
All right, we're live.
We are live. I was just going to get that out. Thank you. So I won't talk about what all, we're just going to start into this. I'm really good at ruining interviews by talking beforehand. We're live, folks. Welcome to Comic Spot. A lot of my fans, Paul, they like to come on after the fact, so don't worry about the numbers being low. They'll come eventually.
That's fine. I understand.
Facebook people, this is Comic Spot. This was created at the beginning of the pandemic so that veterans of comedy, like Paul Douglas Moomjean and others, like, I don't know, Sinbad, anybody, ring a bell, the comic legends and brand new comics and everything in between could come, tell their story, be heard, and speak things they want to speak to people. So we could get to know, like, and trust you and want to come and support you in your shows. That's the whole point. So today we do have a legend in the comedy business. We have Paul Douglas Moomjean. I put an M in there. What the heck am I doing now? Okay, I'm going to read you the intro, folks. Here we go. And you'll see that Paul is kind of bored because he's heard this before. So here we go. Paul Douglas Moomjean, it is Moomjean, is Southern California native with fresh perspectives on dating. We need this. His numerous careers and his faith. He has fresh perspectives on three things. Pardon me. Dating, his numerous careers, and his faith. I can't wait to hear this. He was a finalist in the 100+ Comedian Ventura Comedy Festival. Appeared on Laughs on Fox, and his VidAngel comedy special, Guys Like You and Me, will be coming out soon. Paul has opened for Tom Segura, Bert Kreischer, Christopher Titus. Take a break, Linda. The Sklar Brothers, OMG. Paul tours the country performing at clubs, colleges, churches, bars, warehouses, and even backyards. He loves sushi and hosting Hooters pageants. OMG, am I so delighted to have you on. This is my chance to get to know you all to myself and a few voyeurs. Hi, welcome to Comic Spot, Paul.
Thank you for having me.
Talk to me about who Paul Douglas Moomjean really is. I mean, there's a lot in your name. You got Paul, could be Italian. Douglas could be Irish or Scottish. Moomjean, I'm thinking Native American.
So far you're 0 for 3, but I won't hold that against you. The last name people always ask, it's actually Armenian.
Oh, wow.
If you change the E to an I, it would be Moomjean, and like Acadian. And so my father and his side of the family is Armenian. They, I think I'm third generation. They came from Armenia. They actually, in Merced, there's a very popular street known as Moomjean that's people, there's an actual Moomjean Avenue. It's a very well-known name in that community. I used to coach high school wrestling, and I would have the Merced coaches come down. They go, Moomjean, do you have a street named after you? And I go, it's probably a grandfather I never met. So there's that. Paul Douglas, though, Paul was based on the religion. Paul the Apostle. Douglas is my uncle's middle name, and we have more of a German background.
Really? That's
my
so
mother's
cool.
side, yeah.
Well, talk to me about the German side of your mother. I want to hear that.
I know nothing about it. My family's the least cultural group of people you ever met in your life. Like, in fact, my mother has probably, I think she stopped having alcohol at like 23. So there was no Oktoberfest in our house. There was none of that. So I like culturally speaking, I know nothing really about my Armenian side family background. I know very little about my grandfather's more German background. Everybody pretty much lived in Van Nuys for the first, which is the San Fernando Valley. That's my culture, the San Fernando Valley.
I love it. So then how was growing up? being Paul Douglas Moomjean?
Well, it's funny. My parents got divorced in the third grade, which, obviously that's when I started to use humor as a way to get attention. I
Absolutely.
remember clearly trying to make people laugh. I remember I started around fourth grade listening to comedy albums and tapes in the late 80s. George Carlin, Richard Pryor, because that's what was sold in the little cassette tapes, and I would listen to those. And then it was funny. I remember hearing Jason Alexander, who played George on Seinfeld, one time say he used to do the comedy routines to not get beat up at school. And I would do the same thing. I would do the comedy routines because the kids never heard these jokes before. So I would just tell some stories and jokes that I heard on these albums. And then I became kind of the funny kid. In sixth grade, I was voted most likely to be a sit-down comedian. So what's funny about that is that if you think about the Zoom comedy scene for the last year, I have become a sit-down comedian. So there's something very prophetic about that I found very interesting. But my life was very middle class. My mother and we always had a nice home to live in and stuff. When my parents split, my dad chose to spend way less money on our living so that he could pursue his other ideas. So every other weekend I did sleep on the floor in a sleeping bag, which I once had someone make a joke about, oh, well, what do you know about being poor? I said, I slept in a sleeping bag from 1989, right? From 1989 to 1999 for 10 years when I visited my dad's place. I slept in a sleeping bag every other weekend on the floor. So I in a studio apartment with 4 people, my step, right. So whenever you look at like why people get into comedy, a lot of times there's this backstory that is not in the front, right? Like I'm not leading with this. I don't walk around Walmart going, I slept in a sleeping bag, give me a discount. Because you just say that's your normal life. And then you look back and you realize that wasn't normal.
Yes.
Or it was abnormal. And therefore, it starts to shape who you are a little bit. You don't realize that till maybe later.
Yes, that's for sure. It's like, when I was growing up, my parents survived the Holocaust. So I assumed everybody did, right? And in some ways everybody did, so I wasn't that far off. But you don't find out that it's really weird to have Holocaust surviving parents as parents. Should they be parents? Maybe not.
My cousins, my aunt, my biological aunt on my mom's side, she married a man, my Uncle Norm, whose mother and father were Holocaust survivors, and the mother was on Schindler's List. Yeah, they passed away about probably 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. But I remember they talked about it. Like she was one of the people on Schindler's List.
Oh my gosh, what a great thing in your past to have.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that when Jewish people are hosting a comedy thing that I'm on, I like to open with, thank God, finally one of us Jews are in charge of a list.
Yeah, it's I think it's interesting how many people don't know about their history. I think it's a parent's responsibility. And I think what happened was my grandparents on both sides of the family just did not see the historical aspect, either from Armenia or the kind of European German mutt. They did not see that as important as where we currently were. So I don't know much about my family history. I remember one time my grandmother on my father's side actually did some research before the 23andMe. I mean, this is back in the early 90s. And she found out that we were the long lost relatives of some Prince of Wales. And, and I said, well, do we get ownership of the throne, Dad? And he says, if everyone in England dies.
Wow,
if everyone, so if they completely wiped England completely free, then I have a chance to be the Prince of Wales.
Wow. With COVID, that could be a possibility.
Yeah. I would hope not. I would be a terrible king. I'd be terrible.
What would you do if you were a king? What would be the first thing you would do?
It depends on where I'm at, right? Because it's the resources. So for instance, if you look at what dictators do, they eat all the food and sleep with all the women. So if that's what I did, I would no longer be a king, I'd be a dictator. right? So it just depends on where I take over. I mean, that's what that whole premise of King Ralph with John Goodman was, right? What happens if a sleazy Vegas, pianist becomes the king by accident? And I think that Americans don't understand royalty. We don't understand how important it is to the people of England and how they view it, and how much of a symbol it is.
Yeah.
So if any American were to ever, this is why I think when the Queen was so upset about her grandson marrying I forget what her name was, but they married and they moved to New York, is they didn't want an American to have access to the throne. That's how important it is to them. And I don't blame them, because America probably would just make, as king, Americans would just force Netflix to make more television shows. That'd be it.
Well, speaking of human suffering, which we were a minute ago, I don't think that Armenians have always had it easy either.
No, the victims of Holocaust, the Turks. But like I said, that was never brought up in my house. It's something that I learned later down the line in a Western civilization class in college. And the professor would be like, do we have any Armenians? And I'd raise my hand and he'd be like, oh, that's funny, Paul. And I go, no, that's what Moomjean is. And he would go, oh, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. So if you're looking, if you want to know greater things about the Armenian Holocaust, I'm not the person to go to. I didn't even go see the movie with the Star Wars guy 2 years ago. So I have no idea.
Absolutely. So then you were funny, and so people told you were funny, and you continued to do things to avoid being bullied. So were there teachers or people you looked up to that got behind you going into comedy?
I was a teacher, and before I did stand-up comedy, I was a high school English teacher and a wrestling coach, but I was known as the funny teacher and the funny coach. And so to get into comedy, I got in, when I was 25, I started working at Nickelodeon. I was already teaching, and I was working, and then I due to budget cuts, I was not able to get a job that I needed to get, and I couldn't stay at the other place. There's just not enough money. So I ended up getting a job at Nickelodeon as a production assistant with my uncle, the one I mentioned earlier. Yes. And I ended up becoming very well respected as a hustler. And the executive producer, Dan Schneider, took me on as his personal assistant. So now I was working in the writer's room on iCarly and Zoe 101. And so my comedy career kind of started there. Then when the writer's strike happened, I got out of it completely because I did not like the idea that my job could be taken away from me at any point because of a strike. So I decided to go into teaching. So I got a master's degree in film theory and English. It was a dual major. And I ended up becoming a high school teacher again and a college professor teaching English and film and teaching critical thinking. And I was the funny teacher. And I just kept making jokes. And so what I did was I took some of those jokes to Flappers about 7 years ago and decided I'm just going to go ahead and tell jokes. And it worked. And then eventually what happened was I decided to take a class at Flappers because I wasn't quite sure. I knew I needed someone that I could go to once a week for my first 6 weeks of comedy and just ask questions. And now that was 2015 when I started taking classes there. Now I run the school. Yes. So and it's I started teaching and it's been very rewarding. And I will say this, when I started running the school, it was 2019 November. And then the pandemic hit in March and we converted the whole school to online. And I was already familiar with Zoom because of my corporate background as well. I used to work as project managers for big corporations and big businesses, but the jobs were always contract positions because nobody hires employees anymore because that's too expensive. And so I took all those online skills and I took all of that training and I then applied it to how I run the school. And we've been able to build the school pretty well. It was already growing, but we were able to take it up a notch with the Zoom because now we got people from all over the country and all over the world taking classes with us. And so that's been really rewarding, and so there's a group of Germans that I actually get to work with once a month. They come into our joke labs on Wednesdays and it's just been really fun and rewarding to get to meet people all over the world and So yeah, that's been it.
That's so amazing. I was with the corporate offices of Washington Mutual in 82, and I was delivering classes to tellers, new accounts, and loan people for 5 days at a time. And I had a punchline for every single paragraph. It was so boring. So I know what you mean.
Yeah, but because of comedy, I was hired. I was hired by a traffic school to punch up stuff, and then they had me create content and then manage stuff. And because of that, I ended up speaking at an OSHA conference on safety, because our industry was about safety, and we also had safety videos on oil and gas and all these other things. And so I pitched to my CEO at the time. I said, "Would you like me to go speak at one of these events?" He says, "Yes, this will help our business a lot." So I got to go speak at an OSHA conference as a safety expert.
Yes.
And yeah, so comedy opened up doors for me that other things would not have. My master's degree only opened up education jobs. The comedy thing opened up much better paying jobs, because people like the idea of I'm a clean comic, but they like the idea of a comic who can come in and make things less dry, make things a little bit more fun. And so I was creating like content for biotech companies. I was creating content for safety schools. I was creating content for all these different places.
Good Lord, what a career. What a career and a legacy. You're leaving a legacy. That's
Well,
so...
you know what's funny is because of the digital footprint we have. So, you know, I've Googled my name, and I'm all over the internet with Internet Movie Database, my writing career, freelance, all these stuff. So yes, if anybody ever wanted to know about Paul Douglas Moomjean, it's not hard. It's all out there.
What are some things you want to accomplish for the rest of your life?
I always joke with people that I have 3 goals in comedy. One of them is to open for Jim Gaffigan. One of them is to play Carnegie Hall. And one of them is to tell a bringer producer I worked with one time, "No, you can't be on the show." I won't say who, but he yelled at us. It was like a weekend of comedy. I had no idea what a bringer was. They yelled at us because nobody brought anyone. And I said, "I don't like that, man." He yelled at me. So that's it. I mean, like, you know, I'm not a big fan of goals that I can't control.
Wow.
Most people go, "Oh, I want to have a Netflix special." You can't control that. Netflix can control that. In fact, Netflix could come to you and offer you a special and say, "We'll give you $30,000. And you'll say, "But you gave Dave Chappelle 60 million. And they'll say, "Yes, but he's Dave Chappelle. We're giving you 30,000. And then you may choose not to do that, right? Because you're like, "No, I think I can give more money." Well, now all of a sudden, what was it about? Was it about the Netflix special or the money?
Exactly.
So I look at goals and I go, here's what I can accomplish. I can successfully attempt to continue to build a fan base. I can continue to build content. Those are things that I don't need control. I mean, I can control that, how I pursue it. So for goals, I mean, I have a dry bar special coming out pretty soon. It took a long time because of the pandemic. It's been backed up, but it's finally coming out. And so, you know, the next step is hopefully that opens up more doors. So really, I don't think it's necessarily about having goals. I mean, I think we should have things we want to do, but they should be tangible. They should be measurable, right? So like, for instance, when people say things like, "Well, I want to become a famous comedian," you can't control that. Like, people determine if you're famous, not you. In fact, how many times has Hollywood stuffed someone down our throat, putting them in 10 movies over 2 years, and they never click? Because people will determine. And so, but what I can do is I can put myself in places and opportunities and hope that those opportunities build to the next one.
That's amazing.
And that's all I can do.
I like that. I'm going to hang on to that. That's the right perspective. So you spoke in your intro about your faith. Did you want to take time for that?
Of course.
Let's hear it. I want to know what this, and what is the thing on the wall that's hanging? There's little things strung together. Is that part of your faith?
Those are some lights. When the pandemic hit, I'll say this before I get into the faith thing. So I live in a studio apartment in Van Nuys. I could afford a little bit more. Here's what I decided though. If I'm going to be a successful comedian, I don't want to have a home I want to go to. because I want to be out. Because in 2013, when I was a teacher and I was able to afford this really nice 2-bedroom apartment in Simi, and I was able to have HBO and all these special, TV features, and I had a rabbit and I had all these things. Here's the thing. I'd go home after work. Maybe I go to the movies, but I'd always end up home. I wasn't working on any personal desired projects. What happened was I was able to start becoming more successful in comedy when I knew if all I had at home was a bed and that's it, I'm essentially living in a Motel 6. I said, I'm not going to make myself comfortable. Yeah. But then when the pandemic hit and I realized I'm going to be stuck in this place for a while, potentially, I ran over to the Target and I bought a whole bunch of lights and I bought artwork and I bought all these things that I could put up and make it look more presentable, like a place where that reflects my soul and my spirit. Yeah. And the owl that you see right behind you there was a painting by a wonderful comic, Lance Paulin. He was giving everything away because they too, him and his girlfriend were trying to reset everything for the pandemic. And he gave that to me and I put it up. And that is, I named her Mel because I have a friend who worked at Hooters who also liked to smoke. And so I said, this is Mel the owl. So that's what I named her. As for my faith, I was raised evangelical, moral majority Republican growing up as a kid. My politics have changed a lot since then, though I still hold to a lot of very conservative values. I still have a more libertarian way in which I look at the world, which is I can live my life, you can live yours, and we should be able to live together. But my faith is very important to me because one of the things that my faith has established is the idea that it doesn't matter what you necessarily do in this life. You may or may not have a legacy. You may or may not have, people may or may not remember you. I mean, we've had 45 presidents or 46 presidents now. To ask people to name more than 12, it gets hard. And anything before Woodrow Wilson, people may not even know they'll go, well, Lincoln, that's it. So even if you become president of the United States, it's not like people are talking about Polk or Buchanan a lot. And so that's a good reminder that my legacy is not necessarily tied to earth, but my legacy is tied to the idea that I'm with God, that in the afterlife and the life to come, or as Hamlet called the undiscovered country, that is where my real legacy stands, and that it's in the eyes of God, not in the eyes of men. And so it's a very humbling way to remind myself continuously that it does not matter necessarily what happens here from a success standpoint, but from a goodness standpoint, from a moral standpoint, from an ethical standpoint, from the idea that if you look at the Christian faith from a place of Christ did not see himself to be elevated, but to be humbled, to serve, not to be served. And if that is how we're supposed to live our life, as a constant sacrifice to others, then, the Netflix special doesn't seem that important.
Yes, absolutely. I have a strong faith, and, it's been shattered a few times with life, but you pick yourself up and you get connected back to your faith. My mother was Christian. My father was Jewish. And so both gods like me.
Yes, Yahweh and the Father.
Do it my way and Yahweh.
Yeah.
Yahweh.
Yeah, no, and that's what's very important. I think that when people talk about faith being a crutch, I would say, well, everybody has a crutch. For some people, it is how like I have a lot of lawyer friends. It's the law. That's what they crutch on, right? They go, well, is it legal? And Christians and Jews and Muslims ask the question, is it moral? Is it pleasing to God? And here's the thing, I think a lot of people, the idea of sin is missing the mark. It's not necessarily bad behavior. A lot of people want to do the good thing. They want to do the right thing. They don't know how to do it, or they think there's a shortcut to it. That in many ways is what the story of Adam and Eve is, which is Eve goes, yeah, I want to be like God. That sounds great. But she didn't do it the way in which God would have wanted her to. She disobeyed. It's missing the mark. That's how most people live their life. They go, I want to feel happy. So they go, I don't feel happy. I deserve to feel happy. There's no Bible verse that says, don't be happy. And then they decide to do drugs or drink or do something that is actually missing the mark of what true happiness is. And so that's how I try to live my life, is trying to just not miss the mark as many times as possible.
Yes, absolutely. So talk to me about the things you want promoted. So I imagine, since you're artsy in the art field, well, and you're also in the techno field, you have a lot of projects you're juggling at one time. You know, on the Ed Sullivan Show, they used to have a guy that spun plates. Now it's us. So
Right.
what are
Well, people can always follow me on Instagram and TikTok at the Moom Abides.
the Moom Abides?
Yeah, that's also my website. That's where I produce my content right now. I've been producing a lot of satirical videos called Dating Advice with the Moom, in which I basically give the world's worst advice possible as a very ironic way of kind of like deconstructing dating. Like I tell people, order her a pizza because she loves it, but don't let her eat it so she doesn't get fat. And so, and people, what's funny is when people get those jokes, when they understand those jokes, they appreciate them. The problem is when people write, "What do you mean? Huh? I don't understand." Because humor is, everyone has a different level of what they can comprehend and what they can give to the world, right? And so that's what's so much fun about those videos, is not so much like I enjoy making them, but I enjoy watching, like, wow, that one got 150 likes and the other one got 8. But what was the difference? And I start to realize there's certain tendencies that when I make fun of how men treat women, thinking they're being a player, that tended to do the best. And so I'm trying to craft a lot of that content towards that.
That's fabulous. Way to go. So do you have a YouTube with a lot of stuff people can go look at? Because I don't spy on people before I interview them.
Yeah, no, if you want it, the YouTube, if you just type in Paul Moomjean or type in Paul Douglas Moomjean into YouTube, I think there's like 3 or 4 or 5 videos. I ironically had a couple of very silly conspiracy theory videos I filmed in my car like 6 years ago, and they have like 5,000-6,000 views. Meanwhile, my stand-up comedy at best 500. So, you don't know what's going to hit. You don't know. The algorithms are against us. Never forget that.
One time my daughter was looking for a job. She's 44. And when she was like 30, she was trying to find a job and she was getting depressed, not finding a job. So I took a sign, a great big poster board from Walgreens, and I stood out on the corner of Walgreens when the traffic was going to work one day with this sign that says, "Hire my daughter, I'll give you $500." And the story went viral around the world. It was like 30 pages on Google of me standing out there trying to get rid of my daughter.
Did it work?
No, well, we got invited on to Steve Harvey and on to Neil Cavuto.
Oh, great. No, that's great. I love
got
both
a lot of people with Amway and that kind of stuff wanting to get her hired, the fake
Right.
job.
When I was unemployed after the writer's strike and I was trying to find a job, it took from 2007 to 2010, because that was during that big recession era. 90% of the jobs I was brought into were what's the word? Pyramid schemes.
Yes.
Yeah. And my favorite ever, and this, I never talk about this on stage because I don't know how to work it yet, but it's a story. I walk into an office and there's like 7 other people, and there's a dude who's dripping wet, 5'6", 100 pounds. Okay. 20-year-old dude. Right. And he's got a suit that looks like he's had, it's just drowning him, right? It's just this giant, completely unfitted suit. And he has 3 of the most attractive, large-breasted women in the world standing next to him, okay? Obviously, he went to LA Casting and hired these 3 women, okay? And I walk in, and it's all insurance sales, door to door in the inner cities, and you sell these $100 insurance cards. I mean, the whole thing reeked of just, crime, okay? And I remember at the end of the presentation, after he said, he actually had a picture of the 3 of the girls and him on a boat. Okay. like, and if you sell enough, Kimberly and Diane and Cindy here will sleep with you on boats. Okay. I go into the little room. There's no phone. There's no artwork. There's nothing but a chair and a wooden desk. And I looked at the girl and I said, do you guys work here regularly? She says, oh yeah, we've been here for 4 years. I go, but you don't have a phone. And this is what she says. And again, beautiful woman. And this is the whole scam. She reaches across, grabs my hand and says, don't you want to spend every day together with me? Now, I realize at this point, I'm like, oh my gosh, like there's dudes who, and I go, well, when would I start? They go, when you give us the $500 for your insurance license. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is such a scam. And I said, oh, I don't have $500. That's why I'm looking for a job. And then I just left, you know, and then they called me and I said, I found a better job. I'm sorry. I didn't. But that was my life for 3 years. You know, I almost sold Kirby vacuum cleaners, right? They called me in, they go, Paul, what are you doing here? You have a master's degree. I said, it said on the thing, you're looking for managers and you're going to pay them $1,200 a week. They said, well, yeah, but that's after like 5 years. So legally we can tell you that you'll make that money. But after that job, she explained to me, she goes, listen, I don't want you to do this because you'll tell everyone what we're doing. So just, can we leave on good terms? She goes, we stuffed 20 people in a van. We drop them off in the middle of Long Beach and we have them walk around trying to sell Kirby vacuum cleaners as a team. Like that's what jobs were for a long time where there was nothing out there. So yeah, no, I salute you for at least running around with a sign.
It was crazy. It was crazy and fun, you know, but of all the silly things to go viral, you know, it was very.
Yeah, but that goes back to my point of you can't control what's being famous.
Yes.
Right? Like I've made videos where I did massive amounts of editing, music choices, voiceover, put it out there, 200 views. I do a video where I smoke a cigar and tell bad dating advice, 10,000 views. Like, why is that more, how is that 10 times more successful?
Right, you know? Now, I think with what's going on in the world today, I think somebody could just get up on stage, or I wouldn't recommend it, but on a stage somewhere and just blow raspberries for 5 minutes and it would get likes.
Well, you know, that's interesting because I was joking with someone. I said, Andy Kaufman would have been such a hit on Instagram and TikTok, making his little kind of, you know, troll stuff where he would have done that. He would have blown raspberries for 5 minutes and called it whatever. And he would have then been disgusted with himself that he became this popular doing that. So you're right. There is a sense of like, why does something go viral and something doesn't? And again, it goes back to the algorithms are against us. And when you understand that, you can't be as hard on yourself if your social media is not where you want it to be.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, we have to understand algorithms.
Yeah.
You know, that's very important. I know when I first started doing this, Paul, I was flooding the market with interviews, 5 and 10 a day. Because I didn't know. I just thought I'm bored. People are bored. I'll get as many of these out before the pandemic is over. And then it kept going and going. I couldn't keep up the pace.
No, and in the beginning, you can't. Like we encourage our students, if you want to start posting on social media, post 3 times a day. Then the content platform sees you as a contributor, and then they start to push you more. Right? That's what they do. But then it gets really exhausting after 2 weeks trying to come up with 3 times 7, coming up with 21 videos or 21 pieces of content a week. That's exhausting. Yes, so you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me what you want me to say to get people to, do you have like a donation? Are you accepting, has life been tough with the pandemic or things are good? You're not taking donations or?
I've been lucky enough that I've had a full-time job with Flappers working for the school, but I have lost approximately $25,000 in corporate gigs and comedy gigs. You know, like in my intro, I talked about it. I mean, I used to host all these beauty pageants. The girls loved it because I was the only one they always said that wasn't creepy. That's how I got the job. That was it. Like the group of girls went to the owner of all these different Hooters restaurants and said, hey, can we have Paul do it? He's a comedian. He's not creepy. So I lost a lot of that. I used to perform at Chamber of Commerce events and things like that. So I've lost a lot of that. If people want to support the comedy and continue to help, they can go to the Venmo. which is the Moom Abides as well. I keep everything on brand, the Moom Abides, so that this way it's easy for everybody. And that's where people can find me. And that's if people want to donate to the cause, they have every right to. If they want to take a comedy class, they can go to flappersuniversity.com, sign up. I'm teaching level 1, and I'm teaching joke labs, and I'm teaching in person, socially distanced in the main room. We have no more than 8 people, and we keep them all separated, and it's been really rewarding and fun to be able to do that. And so if they go to the website, they can find the different things that I'm a part of as well, if they want to, get to know what we as a comedy school are offering.
Are you saying that Flappers is open and social distancing now?
No. Flappers isn't open. The CDC said that if you need to run classes like acting classes, music classes, you can. You just have to keep it at an under 10 person, group. So we only have about right now we have 8 total, including myself, in the 200 seat theater, in which people basically just kind of stay away. We wear our masks, we check temperatures, very similar to the way they do it at Jimmy Fallon or the way they do it at Bill Maher, where they let people in and kind of sit around, and we get tested and all that kind of stuff as a company. And so, yeah, I mean, we're because here's the thing is that we don't know when this is going to reopen or not. And the in-person class over the last few months that we've done this, we've had approximately 15, 16 students through the different nights of the week come through. And for them, it's the only social interaction they're getting. And these are all 25 to 30-year-old young people for the most part. This is all people that are not the most prone to getting, sick. And so far, nothing's happened, and it's been really good. And when you look at, the emotional health that this is offering, I go, look, I feel okay. I haven't been sick in a year. So that probably is because I have been around very few people wearing a mask, which maybe that's something we should all be thinking about in the post-pandemic. Absolutely. Is I may just wear a mask if I go to a big place and, have a funny one that says it's not personal. It's just, you may be sick, put something like on that. And then, but that's what we've been doing. We've been offering classes. Everything else is online. And so if people are looking for an opportunity to have 3 hours once a week to work with the head writer of Letterman, or to work with a WGA committee member for our writing classes, or they want to work with me or some of our other comedians. We have comedians who've been on Colbert. We have comedians who were the top stars of Canada. They moved to America right before the pandemic, and now they're working with us. So we have a lot of opportunities there at Flappers University.
Absolutely. So if I sign up for one of your classes in person, there's going to be like 8 people, and you're going to charge me triple because I'm turning 70.
No. The in-person classes are $295, which is still about $100 to $200 cheaper than most schools.
Yes,
it's there's no reason that people shouldn't be able to learn things at an affordable rate. I've been an educator my entire life, through college and through high school, church Sunday school. So I've taught all grades, coaching. That's an element of education as well, physical education. So I've done a lot of these different things, and I can tell you that, people benefit from being part of a group that has a common goal, even if the goals are separately different, but the common goal is to put on a show. And so it builds community. And that's been the most exciting part over the last year, is watching the community build. I got friends right now who they lived in LA. They moved to Texas. They've been taking joke labs and classes. They became friends with comics in New York. And now from Texas, they are performing on New York shows through Zoom. That would not have happened without the pandemic. Not that I'm wishing the pandemic had happened, but you have to look at some of the silver linings, and you have to look at some of the benefits of hopefully we've learned to be more inclusive, and we as a society will learn that it's okay to be able to do things with technology, which, by the way, every time something new comes in tech, we're always against it, right? Like online dating back in the 2000s, everybody said, that's how you're going to get chopped up and killed. Well, there wasn't that many chopped up and killed. Now everyone's on Bumble and Tinder and Hinge, and it's actually, if you're not on online dating now, people go, you're not trying. So I could see Zoom virtual comedy becoming just an extension of alternative venues for comedy. And the people who have chosen not to participate now will potentially find themselves behind the curve when we get to, like, yeah, we're going to have live shows, but for these comedians that are regularly in front of thousands of people, that may not happen for a while. So if you want to make the money you used to make, you may have to do it through the virtual, right? That's your career. And so now it's just like any comedians that want to get into this thing, they're going to have to realize there's more than one way to skin a cat now. And this is very important because the business side of comedy is where a lot of people get frustrated. But I've already seen where our students are starting to build their content. They got TikTok followers. They're taking our advice and they've gone viral. And now they're going to start building a fan base that can see them anywhere because of virtual comedy.
Which is going to get them booked in clubs around the country or world.
Yes. In fact, I'm good friends, not good friends, but I'm friends with a guy who actually has like 1.2 million followers on Instagram. And he built an online following. When they looked at the demographics, they found out that he had a big following in Ohio. So he went there and sold out 5 shows. So yes, the internet and all of this, if you don't accept it as a possible route, doesn't mean it has to be your main, but if you don't accept it, you're going to lose out on a big market. And if your goal is to be a full-time comedian, you're going to have an online following now, because it used to be you had to have a relationship with the club, but now the club is looking at who has a relationship with our neighborhood.
Yes.
And that's going to be important too. When I started doing road work, I realized, so I used to do, I still will eventually, but I used to go to this club in Arizona, Laughs Tucson. And it seemed like every time they sent me was around the same 2 or 3 week period. So it was always like in a January or February part. And I was always working with the same headliner. And I asked him, he goes, I do the same tour every year. He books out every club that he normally has a relationship with. And then he told me he's starting to get on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok more so that he can build out more fan bases, because he goes, I'm going to lose my job to the next 25-year-old comic who has 2 million followers. He goes, so I have to build a fan base to continue to bring value to the club. And that's what he's doing. And he's doing a great job. And he's still, doing shows in Washington, Oregon, places like that are more open. But yeah, that if you, what is it in the movie Moneyball? Adapt or die.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'm going to head on out of here because I have this person. I don't know. His name is, let me see if I can, Tommy Chong.
Yeah, he made a movie once, I think.
Yes. I think that, some people seem to think he's important. So I'm going to try doing my Jiminy Glick on him. Just kidding.
Have fun. He's a great guy.
Have you met him?
I have friends who have worked with him, and they told me very positive things. When I worked at Nickelodeon, I worked with a lot of people who worked on scripts and movies in the 70s, and then they kind of got into kids TV to get a little less hours, and the Tommy Chong and Cheech, they love them. So yeah. Your audio has gone out. Still out.
Now.
There you go.
It was my fault. I unplugged it accidentally. Yeah, I got crib notes everywhere to glance at, like nobody will ever know I'm looking at notes if I'm doing this, right?
Right.
Thank you so much. It's so great to meet you. You guys get out and follow him. I'll post all his things after I get done with this Tommy Chong guy.
Thank you. Bye, Linda.
Bye. Love you.
Bye. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.